Welcome to the Embodiment podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Markwalsh.
Yes, good. We are live on Facebook. We are being recorded. We'll stick it up as well later. So let me introduce you here today. So we've got this marketing thing coming out this week, Marketing.coach. If you want to find it free, how to unfuck yourself around marketing, basically. So I wanted to get into the mood for that. I wanted to get some ideas. I wanted to bring some other people in. So basically, I just called up some of my friends who aren't like marketing experts. They're just people that have done well in their own field, doing their own thing. So we have Miles Kessler. He is running an Aikido Dojo meditation school. He kind of gave me the idea for the Embodiment conference, really. One of the people that got me into online working originally. So much love to Miles joining us from Tel Aviv.
Yeah,
say hello, Miles.
Nice to be here with all of you.
And we also have Mel. So Mel joining us from New York, yoga teacher. I think I first heard her like swearing on a podcast about yoga, and she co-authored a book that I really liked. I just reached out to her, said, "You're the kind of scumbag I need to be friends with." So Mel, how you doing today?
I am doing amazing, and thank you for being my scumbag friend. I really appreciate it.
So I'm in Mexico and I'm just waking up. I was kept up all night by noisy ass people. So if I look, you might have a chance to actually get a word in edgeways today. I'm just waking up. And last but not least, John Williams. So when I started looking at life purpose stuff a few years back, John was one of the main names that kept coming up. He's just re-released his book, Screw Work, Let's Play. There we go. It's now called Fuck Work, Let's Play. We're going. It's leading the trend here. And
shameless plugging.
Jumping on the fuck bandwagon.
Also doing kind of online stuff as well now. So we've got a coach and an author, a yoga teacher, and a martial arts and meditation teacher. Pretty representative of my kind of group and tribe in many ways. Yeah. So, welcome.
Welcome, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's dive in there. Like, why are so many of our people, I say our people, like our friends, our colleagues, our students, the people we like hanging out with, I would say, why are so many of them screwed up around money and marketing? Anyone at all, just dive in there and go for it.
Well, I don't think anybody doesn't come into this world really without getting fucked up around money and value and equating that with self-worth. And it becomes a whole quagmire of emotions when people then enter in business and have to do the work to undo that quagmire, unpack what they're bringing to the table that blocks them from being able to be financially successful. That's just my opinion on that.
Just think we all kind of have it. So it's not really sort of our kind of people, particularly yoga or meditation, all that. It's just that everyone has issues there.
I think there's also pressure in whenever you're working in a wellness setting or with bodies, that there's an idea that, and partially because many of these modalities have been coming from other cultures, and here they're more industrialized in a first world capitalistic setting where we have to live and pay rent. And so it's uncomfortable to think that you can make money and make really good money off of helping people. And I think that gets difficult for others. I don't have that problem anymore.
I'll come to that next then. Maybe like, what did you do? How did you overcome it? But let's start with Miles. Why do you think people have issues around this stuff?
Well, I mean, my take is kind of what my issue was. I wasn't particularly raised with a inclination towards making money, but it wasn't a problem either. But my journey has been from material to spiritual, and in that journey, there has been a letting go of materiality. I mean, we weren't necessarily rich, but I certainly came from a privilege, and moving into these. I lived in Japan. I lived in Burma to do my practices, and that was really kind of letting go of a lot of creature comforts to do those things, and I loved it. It's part of my whole journey, and I don't need that stuff. And especially when you taste or tap into higher states of consciousness. Materiality is really not what it's about. And then, in the classic hero's journey, that's kind of me leaving the world. Coming back, it was a big issue. but we'll save that for later.
So that's interesting. So there is this classic association in Christianity, maybe less so in Judaism, where you're out there in Israel, and Buddhism as well, that to have money is not a spiritual thing. And that could be either like a genuine insight, like I've slept on couches and Aikido dojos and had nothing and been so happy, just been just had a bowl of rice to eat every day and felt just, wow, why would I need money? I'm so much happier than all these guys who would come in to train Aikido with loads of, pull up in their Ferraris and be miserable. This could be that genuine sort of insight. And as you say, into like, wow, this is not the purpose of life, just to have money. And then
and also the association of money and greed, this kind of ego pursuit.
I think that can either be a trapping or a real insight, right? So some people don't really have
it's both. Yeah, absolutely.
A picture of that makes you more spiritual. And then, as you say, there is this returning to the marketplace, if they use the old Zen, ox herding pictures of coming through that back to the world. So we'll come back to that. John, what do you reckon? Why are so many of your students, you're helping them with life purpose, you're helping them, set up businesses for the first time? Like, why do you think there's so many issues there?
I think there's a couple of things. One is that marketing, actually, at the heart of it is empathy. It's the ability to put yourself in the other person's shoes and then think about what they really want. Now, if we were really good at that, we wouldn't have any problems in our relationships, would we? So clearly humans generally struggle with that concept of putting ourselves in the other person's shoes. So we wouldn't have arguments, and we wouldn't ever objectify anybody else. So I think that's part of it. I think there's also the issue of there's a disconnect between the value you create and the money you make in a job. So most people start their careers in a job, and so they don't see the difference. So if you do a really good job today, you don't necessarily get paid more money tomorrow. But when you're self-employed, there is a very direct relationship, and you have to think about how to communicate that value. But there's another thing. I think my computer might just be going crazy at the minute, so I have to plug in my microphone to make it a bit quieter. But there's a particular problem in the UK for those of us. So you and I, based mostly in the UK, Mark, which is that somebody pointed out to me a long time ago, which is because the health service is free, it sets an expectation that you get expert help, particularly on your health, free of charge. So there is a particular resistance in the UK to actually paying for advice. So there's a huge number of people in the country, in the UK in particular, who would never pay to improve their life in some way in terms of advice or help. And so I think there's a particular issue with us. I'm a fan of the NHS, so it's not like I'm saying the solution is to remove the NHS at all. But there is that particular situation here.
There is a cultural piece as well, isn't there? Like in England, I noticed a big class difference. My sort of upper class friends are raised to be like, hey, you're just going to make money. That's natural and normal. You're going to start a business. Whereas in my family, sort of working class family, it just wasn't a normal thing. It was like, just be lucky you have a job. And there's a real I noticed a big difference between the United States and Israel and the UK in terms of how freely people will talk about money, how much people will put themselves forward to sort of, we asked we said, hey, who's a great life purpose coach? And like 10 different Americans said, I am. And that ability to sort of put themselves forward is just not very European. And I think you're our sort of token normal white guy here as well, John, in that I'm from an Irish immigrant family. Miles is in Israel, and Melissa's, you're from a Hispanic background, right, Melissa? Is there cultural stuff there? I mean, I'm in Mexico now, so I'm kind of curious. I know the kind of Israeli and American piece and British piece. Is there like a Hispanic piece here?
Oh, completely. I was making a pithy remark earlier about moving to the Upper East Side, and I currently live in the Bronx. And I live in the fancier area of the Bronx, but as we say here, it's still the Bronx. And so what that means is there are huge socioeconomic influences in Brown and Latino communities that you see here that affect us systematically. And I even have been processing a little bit of guilt about leaving.
Got it.
And like, even though it's the right thing for me and I'm taking advantage of my blessings and the work I've created to get to that point, there is a little bit of like, like, oh, who am I to go and live in this new building with all these luxury amenities, and I'm leaving the other Latinos behind. And like, you don't think that shit is there until you start making the identity shift into a new place. And then it comes up.
It's internalized, isn't it? And I think there's this piece around identity. So certainly British working class and Irish background, it's almost like a sense of betrayal.
Yes.
And I remember when I made sort of quite a decent paycheck for the Embodiment conference, and I sent a screenshot to my auntie, right? And she's like first generation immigrant, right? Saying, hey, I'm a millionaire now. I mean, only for a few hours until we paid everything.
Until we pay all the bills.
It was kind of fun to be able to say that. Like, I'm the first millionaire in our peasant Irish family. And I sent that to like my auntie and my uncle as well, actually. And it was a weird reaction from them because they were happy for me, but there was almost this sense of, you're not really one of us now.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of jokey, this is very British, John, as well. Like, who do you think you are? And I'm like, I think I'm someone who worked for 15 fucking years, worked really hard, took a massive risk, and yes, had some good luck with a team of good people. And it's like, I don't feel guilt about that, but on an identity level, they were almost like, are you out of the club now? Was the kind of joke, because we're from a family of fairly poor, teachers and artists and stuff like that. So I think the identity piece is key here.
Mm.
Okay, so I mean, we've all sort of overcome stuff, or Miles has been through his spiritual journey. Melissa, you talked about yours, John, yours. So what do people do if they go, all right, I've got stuff around money and around marketing, I've got issues, I know, maybe it's feeling guilty or not wanting to make yourself, in the marketplace in a big way. What do people do? What's your advice for students who are kind of in that place?
I think take it step by step. You don't have to. You shouldn't necessarily be imagining it's going to go away immediately, and just set your expectation right. And your expectation is that you're on a learning journey. Someone once described entrepreneurship to me as a 365 day per year, 24-hour self-improvement workshop. And part of that is around money and marketing. And once you embrace that and go, oh, what's going to happen next? What's going to be different now? Maybe when you make 10 million next time, Mark, something else will come up rather than the 1 million mark. Who knows? And we never know quite what's going to trigger us until it has. But if you set your expectations, set your dial for, okay, there's going to be surprises, and embrace them. I don't know if that sounds a bit idealistic, but usually these are good things. It's like, how do you embrace your ability to make more money, learn to be a better marketer? It's just set your expectation for continual, never-ending learning, and you probably won't be too shocked or disappointed.
And there is almost a way you build tolerance. Like meditation, you don't start out with a 10-day Vipassana, hopefully. You do 10 minutes, you do an hour. With martial arts, you don't just attack your students full on, you build it up from a wrist grab. I think it's almost like that with marketing and money. You do a little Facebook Live, or this would have made me nervous 10 years ago. Now I'm like, I'm just chatting with friends. It's no big deal. People can take it or leave it. There's a sort of tantra to it of learning the non-attachment through sort of increasing stimuli and going, oh, I didn't die. And hey, my auntie doesn't really hate me, and it's okay, like just getting used to it is part of it, I think.
Yeah, but it's absolutely it, I think.
What else helps people who are kind of, because most of my friends in the yoga world, the martial arts world, they know they have stuff here. They just kind of don't know what to do about it.
I would say that it's part of the journey. What if again, this is a marketing video. You're about to teach a marketing course. So assuming that somebody watching this is considering how to do it, or they're doing it, but they're not doing it as good as they'd like to. If you're in that position, that means that you've already gone through a developmental journey, and you've passed through difficulties and challenges, and you faced the blockages towards your potential. You worked them through, maybe with help or whatever. But you have a perspective that you're going to offer in one way or another to people, because you've been through that journey, and you see either their pain points or you see their aspirations, and you're able to close that gap. You're able to give them step by step to gain what you have to give. That the second part of that journey is now it's the exact same formula on re-owning our inner businessman or businesswoman on reowning marketing, because we're gonna reach the same blocks, the same difficulties, the same challenges of working with money, and not just working with money, of asking for money. Hey, I got this amazing for years. I had this amazing course that's great, and I could like with diagrams and the ease and skill and professional explanation. Then when it's time to sell, oh yeah, and it costs this much money, and then goodbye. I would become like a little kid at that point. But that was a new journey to integrate that back into into the rest. I have this much development here, but this much development here. So now that has to be work as well. I like
the idea of integrating, and I think people can take skills they've learned from elsewhere for that, to develop that atrophied or underdeveloped side. Like with the asking for money, like, how much does your course cost? I do an exercise with students where we do centering. So if they've already done yoga or martial arts, they know a breathing exercise, they know a grounding exercise. And then instead of shrinking or contracting, we have them breathe, say, I say the name of someone you love. Like, I know my niece, I say Jessica. Yes. And then I say, right, now say the price of your product. And they say $10. And I say, we go back and forwards, and we show them the difference in the body, get them breathing, get them putting their feet flat on the ground, face it. And we just practice it. And within about 10 minutes, people have got a noticeable improvement, right? Just by working with the body and that contraction.
And just one thing to add there, then I'll step back, is that, if you have a perspective that you see as valuable, like the old Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. If you've got that perspective, of course you can just keep it and go on with your life and all be good. But if you are moved, like John said, empathetically or compassionately to offer this to other people, you have a responsibility to do this work.
Yep.
Period.
And that is my fundamental reframe for people. Because before you teach people any marketing skills, you have to reframe it. That's going to be my next question after I come to Mel. Would be, okay, what is marketing framed in a way which is positive, which is aligned with your values? And one of the frames I have is, if what you do is a good thing, you think your yoga's good, your healing work's good, whatever you do, it's a moral good to share that thing, to make that thing available. I give the analogy of a sandwich. I'm like, if you had a sandwich and you're not telling hungry people about it, that makes you an asshole. So marketing is just not being an asshole. That's all it is. It's like, I'd completely flip it. And people are like, you know what? That sounds silly, but your logic is impeccable. You have a good thing. You tell people about it. That makes you less of an asshole. That's all marketing is. But Mel, what do you do if you have like a friend and they come to you and, they're in the ghetto in the Bronx and they say, hey, Mel, I'm worried about selling my yoga class or whatever. What do you tell them?
Well, so this is actually going to be, I think, a good segue into what you were saying about like, how do you align with it and value systems and reframes. And first of all, I love the embodiment work that people are bringing to it, because I think this like sort of new stage of coaching and health and wellness we're all doing is really about embodying what it is you want. So I don't think that piece can be left out anymore. And my advice to people right away is always, get yourself a coach who speaks to you about this, because this is its own therapeutic field. Like if you have it, I believe in delegating and having an entourage. Like I have a therapist, I have a sex and pleasure coach, I have my financial advisor, I have a dentist. Like why the fuck wouldn't I get like a financial coach to be like, get that shit out of your head? Because I'm not going to waste time. I am a New Yorker. I don't got time to waste. Like let's solve that shit. You pay you, boom, done. Now that's the easy sounding part, right? But then there's the work part of it. And I'm speaking as the only female on this panel who is a woman of color. There is a feminization of capital that I am so into right now, where I'm like, especially just for me, what's going on in the States right now politically, that I'm like, I'm never going to be ashamed of getting money again, because I can be trusted, because I'm not a piece of shit. Like when this pandemic hit and I started making good money off of all my virtual training, I was donating upwards of $1,500 a month to people in the pandemic. And I was like, this is why I need to make money, because I'm going to be fucking Oprah. Like you see how people are handling it. I'm like, I'm done. Give that shit to me. I'll do good in the world.
Well, it's a form of power, isn't it? And I think particularly if we come from populations that have had less power, or whether that's just a psychological thing, family, or a group of people like Irish or whatever, then it's there's a way in which it's a reclaiming of power, and you can use that power for good.
It's a very romantic idea to be like, I'm on the sofa and I'm having the bowl of rice and I'm whole. And that is true and fundamental. But like when you've been living your whole life like that, and then you go somewhere and you're like, hot fucking water consistently, I am living the dream of my ancestors.
yeah, right. You don't have to go many generations back, and any of my ancestors would
what?
say,
I'm one generation away from where you are with like a burrito. You know, I'm like, no, I'm good here in New York.
Potatoes, burritos, it's the same stuff.
Right? We feel each other. We got it.
Potato. But it's and this, I think, jokes aside, this is really important. But there's a political element to this. But for me, it feels, I notice I get like excited. I don't want my peeps to be disempowered. And for a long time, I couldn't understand why I've got really emotional and passionate about teaching marketing. Because I'm an embodiment teacher, right? And while there's an embodiment element to marketing, I'm like, why do I love this so much? And why would I get standing ovations at the end of my seminars for teaching it? And I realized it was because it was about empowerment. It was about giving people something that almost like the last bit that they needed, but without that bit, they were screwed. No matter how good a yoga teacher they are. And for some of them, it was like the first person in generations who had that ability. And I spoke to a millionaire friend of mine yesterday from a very wealthy English family. And I said to him, why do you think money is taboo? And he said, to keep people like me rich. So he was very honest. He said, I come from generations of wealth. And, he's a spiritual guy. So he's kind of, a bit more into kind of spreading it about. And he said, I come from generations of wealth. And the reason it's taboo is because if people like you, and he meant sort of working class people, talk about it and learn the skills, he said, that spreads the wealth out. We want you to be taboo and uneducated about this topic. And it was just such an honest conversation. And we talked about that Justin Timberlake film where everyone has their time on their arm. He said, imagine a world where everyone's wealth was as obvious as that. He said, people like me who come from generational wealth would be terrified of people like you. That's why we keep it secret and taboo. I was like, fuck, that's honest. I'd never heard someone say
good. That's so good.
Yeah. It really landed for me. I was like, boom. Because if he wasn't my Aikido friend, we never would have had that honest conversation, Yeah. Wow. I kind of really noticed an impact when I say that. It's like getting a bit emotional. So.
Well, and I love that, and this is why Mark and I are friends, because we both have a kind of brash irreverence in our humor. And so we say things that are off the wall like that to be hyperbolic, make a point, and it's funny and it relieves tension. But the truth is there is so much for all of us here. It doesn't really matter what country or background. Everybody has this stepping forward in their generations and their family and these progressions. And it's a lot. It's emotional.
And, I know a guy from a super upper class background, and, his thing is feeling guilty about having money, right? So he has a whole nother barrier. So do you know what I mean? So it's everyone's got something to work through. Okay. So in terms of, if someone said to you, what is marketing? Because this is the big thing I'm doing in this course next week is because I wanted to do the best bang for the buck. So it's 45 minutes, 5 times in the week, live, and then free for 24 hours. And the main thing I do is just reframe what marketing is. Because until people do that, they really, they don't do any. One of my students said, what I learned about marketing for you was to do some. And that was the first joke. But what was really underneath that was him not wanting to do some because it wasn't aligned with his values. He had a definition of marketing is pushing and manipulating people to do what I want.
Right.
So he had that implicit definition. There was no way he was going to do it because that wasn't his value. So if someone said to you, what's the definition of marketing that kind of fits your values, what would you say?
I think there's actually a couple of bits to it. So one is that empathy thing I mentioned, which is the ability to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And that starts with the proposition creation, how you position what you're doing so that it lands. And that's a really important thing to do, which people are bad at. But there's another half to marketing, which can get very shady, which is understanding the cognitive biases of human beings and pressing certain buttons to get a response. Yeah. However, the way I always picture it is like when you're writing, for instance, a sales page, you want people to buy, or you're sending an email sequence or something, which we're about to do next week for one of my courses. What we're trying to do is make people decide. So I'm not actually trying to make anybody join who shouldn't be joining the course. I'm trying to make you just bloody well make up your mind. And the enemy really of a sale is somebody going, I'll think about it later, which is not only not helpful because they haven't made a decision, but it's a lie to themselves. So I think the best possible view of that stuff where you're saying, there's a deadline and there's, if this offer's going away, you're playing with scarcity and loss aversion and all these cognitive biases, is that I'm trying to make them go like, either shut up, John, I'm not interested, or like, I'm out, or okay, exactly. I really should join. Right. That's what I want. And it's not about making someone say yes who should be saying no.
So it's about helping people. I love that. So it's about helping people decide. It's like, dude, are you gay or not? Because I'm gay, right? Like, you need to know. Like, let's be clear, you gay or not? Let's just start there, right? Like, so it's helping people decide. And the second piece there, I think, was implicit in what you were saying, is it's about the fit. And I really like this model. It's like, are we a good fit? A lot of people aren't, but some people really are, right? Like, Miles and I are a good fit for being friends because he likes the same kind of rude jokes as I do. We have a shared friend called Patrick Cassidy. We're not a good fit for being friends. Patrick's a great guy. He's a good Aikido teacher. He's a good human being. But Patrick and I are never going to be a good fit for being close friends because he doesn't get my jokes, right? And that's okay, right? I still come to Patrick's Aikido seminar. I still listen to what Patrick says. He's a smart guy, but we're never going to be friends like Miles and I are friends, right? So it's like, is someone a good fit? Is the sort of implicit thing I was hearing in what you were saying too.
Yeah, I love that, John. You lead them to making the decision. Yeah, that's not for me, or it is for me. Because if they walk away with, gee, let me think about it, then in a way, the marketing hasn't done its job.
Yeah,
that's kind of the end of the equation in a way. I see it at first. I love that. This is what I would say. Marketing is your perspective, your perspective, your system, your skill, your methodology, your course, or basically your gift, plus the market's need. When those two things come together and you're able to articulate that would be, for me, marketing and leading people to the point. If they're going to listen to your pitch to the end, that means that they're probably interested in one way or another. And at the end of it, they're going to decide if it's for me or if it's not for me. And it could be for many reasons that it's not for them. Maybe it's not for me today. Maybe next year will be for me. But I think that's where it needs to go, for sure.
So honestly conveying the value you can give. So, for example, I've been doing this work for a few years. I know for a fact I can help hippies with marketing. I know that for a fact. Because I think of Erica, my student, and how far she's come, and the message she sent me 2 days ago saying, Mark, thank you so much. I've built my business. It's been amazing. I'm in a different place now than I was years ago. I just want to thank you. And I go, okay, so I can be pretty sure that she's not lying to me about the value she's got. So I can be pretty sure that I can convey that to other people and saying, hey, if you're a bit like Erica, you're probably, I don't know for sure, but you're probably going to benefit from this. And if you're not like her or you don't need this benefit, that's okay too. Okay. Wow. Melissa, anything on that? Anything on what, like, if someone said, but marketing is all sleazy and pushy, what would you say?
I just love this so much. I love hearing John talk about empathy and Miles about authenticity, and because that's where I'm at right now. And I think what's hard is that people get certain stories in their head, like, well, the market's so flooded, or like, I'm just another yoga teacher. And the truth is that if people were like into really healing themselves and doing yoga, they'd all be doing it. We wouldn't have to market. They'd be like knocking on our door like, hey, I know this is good for me. What people want is they need to connect to someone who they feel safe with. And that's not going to be for everyone. Like my brand is the Body Witch. Not everybody wants to work with a modern day practicing witch who's also really pushy and, curses in yoga class and does personal training the way I do. But guess what? There are going to be a lot of people who feel safer there in that space. And to John's point, that's my tribe. I don't want somebody who I literally once had somebody cry after one of my classes in my arms telling me how much she hated it and was like, I don't ever want to come back. And I was like, you don't it's cool. Like, we're good. I'm not mad. Like, go with God. Like,
did draw a pentagram on her face in blood, though, to be fair, Mel.
What happened?
You did draw a pentagram on.
I did, and then I did like some like blood sacrifice later, with my Aztec ancestors, and was like,
not for everyone. Mel, remind me to hook you up with Sarah later. I have a yoga witch friend in Missouri who I want to hook you up with later. Remind me.
Yes.
So I want to hook you up. So Melissa really speaks to something there, which is, I think, trust and relationship. So I ask people, I say, are you good at marketing? They say, no. And then I say, okay, are you empathic? And they say, yes, Mark, way more than you. I say, okay, great. So that's the start of marketing, right? It's like, can I understand their need? And, John's not saying that like some abstract thing. That is literally the beginning of marketing, is to go, how does my client feel about this? How do they talk about this? How do they articulate the problem? What is the key? Like, that is the heart of it. That's the
heart. Absolutely.
Like, right? Because you're not even getting started.
And it's only through that relationship that your inner marketer, your authentic inner marketer, is going to be born. You've got to enter into that, and there's going to be mistakes, and it's going to be awkward and uncomfortable at the beginning, but with that interaction, the relational aspect of marketing, because it is relational marketing. It's a relationship that we're having. It's a relational conversation that we're having with our prospective client from the word go until the word that they graduate our course. It's a relationship the whole way through.
And this is why I'm amazed that I'm even half good at marketing, because it is all relationship based. And it's as far as I can tell.
And you're good at relationships, like.
Terrible. So I'm average. I always say, like, I'm the one-eyed man in the land of the blind when it comes to marketing. The fact, because it's not like I'm the most empathic, most relational person in the world. Like, Erica's way better. She's gonna absolutely, be way better than me at this in the end, because she's just way better at building those relationships or building trust. Right? If I think of the friendships I've had with you three, that it's the same sort of pattern. It's like there's some kind of reach out. Maybe me and Miles met an Aikido thing, or I heard Mel's podcast and I reached out, or, I had John on my podcast. You build that relationship step by step. And as long as it's step by step, you don't have to be pushy. Like, for me to invite you guys onto this thing today was just no big deal, right? It's like this relationship. It's like, it's going to be fun. We trust each other. And even though these are peer rather than client relationships, it's the same principle.
Yes.
You have things in common, you have shared values, you have enough crossover that it's interesting, you get to know each other, and then over time you have trust. And it's like, it's not a big deal for you guys to speak to me on a Sunday morning, and it's like, we're in that nice place now. And equally, I have clients who are in that place, but it takes time. And as long as the steps aren't abrasive, it's not a problem. You don't have to be pushy or weird, because it's just obvious to do the next thing.
Mm.
Well, I think that's one of the bigger issues around business and marketing in general, is that what I would want people to know is that this is relationship building, and like any valuable relationship, it's a long-term game. Like, we have a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, are sold the idea of like, you just do this click funnel, and in the first month I'm making $100,000 fucking dollars. And like, it's exciting and it's inspiring, and it's vastly untrue. Like, the most of that, people don't see the 15 years of work behind that. They got us here, that. And I would want everyone watching this to know, you're going to be discouraged. You're going to get pissed. And that's part of the process. To John's point from earlier, accept a lot of that and move on, because if you're in it long-term, or you're not. That's the truth.
It really is. Yeah, it really is a long game. And those people, those direct marketers, because there's two fields of marketing. One's direct marketing, and I guess maybe the other you would call brand marketing or something. But direct marketing and the people who used to shove stuff through your letterbox and then became internet marketers. Mm-hmm. And with the right sales page, you can make $1 million, from cold. But really, most of those people have now become famous. So when Frank Kern or Russell Brunson does a squeeze page, everyone wants to opt in because they've already heard of Frank Kern and Russell Brunson. If you take exactly his copy and stick it on your page under your name and no one's heard of you, it doesn't convert as well. So in actual fact, most marketing really is a much longer game about relationship building, and then occasional direct marketing campaigns where you've built that goodwill and you then say, hey, it's time to make a decision. Do you want to come do this thing that started, or whatever it is?
and
It's
you
almost
cash it in.
sorry, John, to cut out there. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's almost like people are looking at the wrong thing when they look at the sales page. I mean, yeah, have a good sales page, get help in writing it. As Mel says, get a professional involved. I work with all kinds of professionals, as soon as you can afford them, get them involved. But if let's say my sales page for this marketing course, right? But maybe someone's been listening to my podcast for 3 years.
Yeah.
Maybe someone read my book last year. Maybe I met Miles over 10 years ago. Maybe Miles shared my
Way
Facebook.
more than that.
It was more than that, like 15 years ago. We're getting old.
Cyprus, whenever Cyprus was.
Miles was getting an inoculation, what's it called, a jab the other day. And I was like, how are you getting a jab so early? He's like, I'm old, dude. Like, time has flown. It was like, anyway, back to my point. Maybe like you shared my Facebook post, but you've got 15 years of trust with me, right? So you know who's going to like my stuff out of your audience and who isn't. So it's like they're not necessarily seeing that long tail. And that's difficult when people are broken, they're in fight or flight. They're like, give me the quick answer, tell me how. And they don't want to know you've got to write a book or do a podcast or, there's all different methods all three of us have used, but we've all done some long-term, Miles, you did a circuit teaching Aikido around Europe, traveling around Europe, right? Mel, you've done similar to me, book and podcast. John, you've done the online stuff as well, but we've all built that foundation that now we can say, okay, and as you know and trust me, how about this?
Yeah.
Which also makes it not weird and pushy, right? Yeah.
And I think you also have to accept, and this is where I am too, and I'm finally coming to acceptance of it, is that it's an iterative process and you will try different things. Some will inevitably fail on the way to leading you to what it is you need to do. And really, it's about putting your feet to the fire and sticking with it. That when you get that first fail, you gather your information, you regroup, and you go forward again. And that's an intense process emotionally and mentally. That's like, that's resurrection on a daily fucking basis. And if you don't have the emotional support, and you're not going to get it from your immediate friends and family, those are not your main market.
but also, that's absolutely right. I wrote my second book was kind of about that. But about the iterative process, about what I call the play cycle. It's called build, measure, learn in startups. And you need to measure your results in marketing. It sounds incredibly boring for anyone who's just starting out, but it is really important because, and also just pay attention. This comes back into embodiment. Like you put a message out into the world, could be, a live like this or a post or whatever. And suddenly it lights up and everybody shares it. And we've all had this experience probably where you put something out which you think is fucking profound and everyone just goes like, yeah. And then you put out something you slap together in 5 seconds when, this is a bit funny or whatever, or here's some random photo from my day. And everyone goes, oh my God, and shares it with everybody they know. And then you have to, the more that happens, you can just go like, oh, that stuff. Like it took me a while before people realized they like faces, they like selfies, even with my face. They like selfies of me. Apparently, that's really exciting. I mean, I'm not
with the glasses, Don. With the glasses.
John, wear your glasses. You all had the same glasses before. Now I thought you know. Look at that. I'm the only one without the glasses.
I hadn't noticed that.
Clearly, you need eye problems. That's the solution. You need eye problems.
We're so sad for you.
I did one yet. It makes you look intellectual, doesn't it? It's like having books behind you. I did one yesterday. I did a 45-minute post on like trauma and COVID and embodiment. And it was really thought through. I've been thinking about it for months and the timing. I thought this is the right timing. And
how many people watched it?
No, wait. The first comment was a gay friend telling me how my eyes matched really nicely with the blue t-shirt. I was like, well, that's good feedback. I mean, blue t-shirts seemed to suit me, but it wasn't really like I was hoping to get, So maybe that's just not my topic, or maybe the time is off. But also, you can do that in light ways, right? Like when I teach a workshop, let's say I'm in Copenhagen, I've 30 people new. I say, hey, who listens to my podcast? I say, hey, who follows me on Facebook? I say, who gets my newsletter? And I go, oh, wow. And I noticed, for example, over the last 3 years, more and more people will be listening to my podcast. Or, feedback doesn't have, it can be very indirect. Like I was in Australia, a guy picked me up from the airport and took me in Daria to stay in his house for free because he listens to my podcast. And my listening was like, wow, this really builds trust in people. right? And I, even though it was in a personal context,
and you trust your audience.
Word, because I'm not even trying to, unless I have a bodyguard, I'm not.
I had Daria with me. Okay, she's only 5 foot tall, but you wouldn't fuck with her. She terrifies everyone. So she just looks at you, and your soul burns. You know that not to mess. Okay, so just maybe to finish up here, what's like a badass marketing model you've come across? Because another thing I've noticed is even once people sort of reframe marketing, they start to get through some of the psychology. And as Mel was saying there, it's not easy when you get that feedback. So it is an ongoing, almost spiritual practice, I say, dealing with rejection, non-attachment. Yep. What about just like a nice model? Like something like I teach everyone sales funnels, relationship funnels. I teach everyone benefits, not features, right? Like what's just because there's so much out there and people can just get lost in it. So what's like a nice little model that you've learned or that you think about when you're doing a launch that listeners would benefit from?
I've got one that I think will help people in the early stages before you've got a lot of long-term relationships. And I teach it on this 5-day challenge we're running next week that I call a generosity offer. So there are a couple of different variations, but what can you do that's really valuable? Like what you're doing here, right, is what I would call a generosity offer. Anyone can watch it. It's free. You don't have to kind of sign up or anything, but it's better if you get people in to engage by, for instance, giving their email address or joining a Facebook group, because then this kind of thing can actually morph very easily into a conversation like, well, for instance, you've been talking about the course you've got coming up. So people will pay attention to that course. You can tie it more closely together. There's another version of a training you have to register for like this, if you made people register. But where you carve your day up into 15-minute calls and you use Calendly or some calendar booking app and you let people just book themselves in 15 minutes free of charge and say, hey, I'm just taking out one day, help as many people as I can, no charge. And people get into a really close relationship with you. And that's the kind of thing that then converts into a sales conversation very easily. So that's one of my favorite things that works quickly at the beginning when you don't have huge numbers of connections.
I think it's Tad Hargrave, a great marketing guy. I'd recommend Tad Hargrave and George Kao, Kao, as a couple of great sort of ethical marketing people. I think Tad talks about the ice cream spoons, like it's the little taster.
The pink.
So like, how do people get a taste of John?
Right.
And 15 minutes, because they don't give you the whole tub, because then you wouldn't buy anything, right? But they're being generous. They're like, hey, this is a chocolate chip. You want to try it? And then you can taste to see if that's for you or not. And I like this idea of leading with generosity.
And it's not a sales webinar. So it's not one of those webinars where really it's just a pitch and you've told people it's not. It's a genuine act of like, here's something really useful.
I think that's important. Like for today, my orientation in the background is like, hey, I hope people sign up for this ethical marketing thing this week. Yeah. But most of what's here is just how much value can we give? Like most of what's here is just how generous can we be? And that is I'm better at that than I am at empathy, if I'm honest. That's something that comes, I'm just a generous guy. My dad was too. It's just something that comes naturally for me. So I want to play to that strength. I think this is a key thing in marketing too, to play to your natural strengths. So like I'm a giver. I always have been. Like you come to my house, you're getting fed, it's like you come for lunch with me, I'm paying, and I want to just give and then people can decide. And I think a lot of people are too stingy with this, They give like a tiny taste of the ice cream. I'm like, have a few spoonfuls. You know what I mean? Like and I also like that model because I'm aware that there are people who are right now too poor to buy my product. They're just too poor. They won't be able to pay their rent if they do, right? They can't invest, even though it's an investment. They just can't. And I go, I want those people to at least have some of the good stuff. Maybe I'm still a bit of a socialist in there at heart, It's like I want this. I feel like that's the best. I always say to people, if you know of a kinder model than freemium, tell me about it. Yeah. I don't know a kinder model.
That's great.
It just isn't a kinder model as far as I know. Because in the real world, I still have to sell something, right? But that model of giving away something of benefit, I can tell I get excited when I talk about it. It helps everyone, including me.
Well, not only is it great, it's so easy to do. Especially these days with technology. Oh my God.
Right? It's easy.
I mean, it may take a couple of hours of putting together a PDF if you're doing something like that, but it's really, with the technology, it's easy to reach a wide audience with a freemium.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe I'll just jump in and so mine, Mark already mentioned before, but it's kind of transforming the idea of a classic sales funnel into a relationship funnel, meaning that, the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, you have the big audience at the top, you build, you have a low price offer in the middle, and then your premium or your signature course or whatever, where you want to get people in, and building at the top. At every level of the funnel, it's a relationship. And in the relationship, not only are you in a way creating authority and building community and all of these things, but you're also in a conversation and you're hearing from the market. You're hearing from the market what they want. We have I know what I can teach, but I've been so disappointed so many times when I offered what I wanted to teach and nobody wants to buy it.
What did you want to teach, Miles? Tell me
audience,
something you really wanted to teach. I want to know something you really wanted to teach, but couldn't.
Yeah, something like it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to teach, but how I wanted to teach it, which is a really, really in-depth way to do either conflict resolution or meditation or deeper awakenings, which is, I put in so much time. But then the audience is really just, they're looking for something that's a little bit more like the ice cream spoon that they can actually digest. And then I just have, I have the curse of in a way too much knowledge, I guess. So I just had to kind of distill it down to what they're looking for. And then as they get into a deeper relationship, then we get into the deeper training together. But the one, in terms of an offer, I love it. Generosity offer. I love that. I'm going to kind of plug that in and kind of work with that. My main generosity offer these days, I suppose, is the community call, where I either get together with another influence, somebody who has a lot of expertise in my field, or somebody that I admire, that I want to learn from, like you're doing on your podcast, Mark. And we get together and do either a teaching or a dialogue together, but as a community. So Zoom has been working wonderful. I've been doing that for about 5 years, and we always get together. And 40, could be 100 people on the call, and it's a free offer. But of course, everybody opts in, so they get into my list, and that's kind of for me, that's the one thing that I probably use the most. I mean, I have a lot of freemiums, free offers, but I think the community call is one of the best because you get community. People come for the idea, for the content, but they stay for the community. Especially now in COVID times, it's getting together is what's really important.
One of the most successful breathwork schools in the world, my friend Anthony Abagano runs. They do every week a free breathwork session for 2 hours. Every weekend, I think it's every Saturday or Sunday morning. I've been to a few of them. It builds trust. It builds community. There's another guy I know who's a famous YouTuber. He does a free hour-long call every day. That's pretty much all the marketing he does. He has a group call where he takes coaching questions. And he just gets up in the morning. That's 9 a.m. for him every day. He takes questions. There's like hundreds of people there. This pretty famous guy. And every it's just for an hour he answers questions, and then he goes about his day. And that's just what he does every morning. It's like, wow, that's a solid commitment. And he's not trying to sell into that. Like every 3 months, he'll put an offer in. The other every day is just him answering questions. It's being like, because he does stuff around strength and men's work. And, I had him answering really like delicate questions about someone who was abused and how was it to be a man after you've been abused. And he's just getting up and doing that every morning, And I was like, respect to that guy. And then every 3 months, he just says, hey guys, here's my latest program. Easy.
Yeah. And in between those offers, he's serving his audience. He's leveling up the people that are probably in his program, because that's a shitload of work. It's hard to do marketing and serve your current students at the same time.
Mel, these men are rudely taking up all the space here. So
Mel.
Any top models, any top things that you recommend?
I have to say, I feel so extraordinarily grateful to be surrounded by such beautiful men today, sharing their knowledge with me. I feel really, really blessed, actually. I don't feel expert enough yet to describe like a model. If it's okay, I would say 2 quick things. One is that to me, it's more important right now, the energy I bring to whatever it is I try out, whatever the model is. And these ideas I'm like sucking and putting into my brain right now. But one is being less fearful and generous, particularly during this time, is something that was hearkening back to what we spoke of earlier. my family was really concerned, who's not in my field at all. And they were like, oh, we got your newsletter and you created these new, group classes online for people. And you say $15 suggested donation or free if you can't afford it. And you shouldn't say that because people are going to take advantage of that. And I was like, thank you so, so much, because it was coming from a loving, protective place.
Right?
That's it. I was like, thank you so much. Understood. But I left it as is. And the exact opposite happens. I had people coming in going, I'm going to pay $50 today so I can supplement for people who can't afford it.
Awesome.
Like people don't realize like the energy you bring to it. And so that's one thing to listen to what these brilliant gentlemen are saying and be generous and be less afraid of that, because that's truly living in abundance.
Mm-hmm.
You want to live in abundance, give freely. And then the other part is that authenticity for me is so important. And particularly as a woman in the wellness and fitness industry I work in, because if I want to get
so much bullshit.
So the bullshit is fucking nuts. Like my brain melts every day. But you know what? Do you want to know how I could increase my followers like this? Let me put on something cute and tight and show you how to do triceps. And it's just shots of my ass the whole time, which is basically what most of that fitness industry shit is. And so when I do live meditations every Monday for free, it's a blurry camera. It's meant to be not lit well. I'm in my jammies. I'm in jammy drag. I never wear like makeup and hair while working out. I try to look as real as possible because I refuse to make money off of the insecurities of other people in their bodies. It's disgusting.
I love the
That's
piece around authenticity, because people feel like if there's, you see why we're friends, Miles. There's people fear being authentic, and they think they'll get more customers if they pretend to be something else. And actually, the opposite is true, because you could be another yoga pants kind of yoga clone, and you wouldn't have stood out. I mean, you stood out to me because you were Mel. You were doing your sweary thing on the podcast, and you stood out. I was like, I want to be friends with this person, right? So it's like, when's the book coming out? So you don't stand out unless you're yourself. And yes, you'll still be judged, but at least you'll be judged for being you. So what I tell students. The other piece I can't believe I forgot, is like, what's your embodiment? What's your vibe? Like, one reason I like to come to Miles's things is he's just like this like calm, spacious field full of love and humor. And I want to be there. Wherever he could be selling trousers, and I'd still buy trousers at his shop, or John is just kind of like down to earth and sensible and, slightly grumpy, but in a sort of fun way. And I like being around that. It reminds me of my dad, and it's British. And Mel, you're cheeky and spiky, and it's like you're like hot sauce on my day, And it's like they're three different embodiments, but they're three different embodiments I like being around. And none of you are in scarcity. None of you are like, you like, buy my thing, because if you don't, then I'm gonna not be able to pay the rent. That's not attractive. You know what I mean? Like this, it's not nice to be around people in that embodiment.
To be fair, I do want to own that there's always still like insecurity and fear and like as one of my teachers said, right? All of us like, new levels, new devil. Like I have shit to work through in this new move now, but I love what Mark is saying because it's true. And I think the energy you bring to whatever you do is what people respond to, even if they're not conscious of it yet. Like this is what they want.
Guys, we need to wrap up. I have a tantric skinhead coming around to give me a massage. And it's just another Sunday morning in Tulum, and so this has been so much fun, which I think good marketing should always be fun. Like I really do not have fun in my marketing. That's play, and I know John's big on this. Is one of my main principles. If it's not play, it's not a marketing I want to do. It's not an energy I want to put out there. So, any closing comment? People watching this, maybe they've closing takeaway. Anything you want to say to finish? Let's do Miles, John, Mel.
Get started. It really gets started. I mean, the only way you're going to learn. I mean, I love what John said about entrepreneurship is 365, 24/7. The personal development. The only way you're going to learn is if you get started and find your authenticity, plus your audience needs, and in your best way meet that, and the audience or the process itself will kind of lead you forward.
Thank you. John, closing wise comment.
Yeah, to move your marketing forward, do something that feels a little bit uncomfortable, but not terrifying. So don't do something that some guru's told you to do that feels completely alien and is going to just be a disaster, but do something that feels a little bit scary, like going live or recording a video or something you feel a drive to do, you feel like could be a good fit for you, but makes you a little bit nervous. And if you keep doing that regularly, you will find your own marketing groove, I think.
Right. There's the stretch or the weight that's a couple of kilograms more than is comfortable. I like it. Yeah. Okay, Mel, closing comment. Finish us off here.
What these homies said, and so thanks for making that easy for me. And be more brave. It's okay to be afraid, but do it anyways. You have no choice if you want things to change. So.
Bravery. Got to have bravery. Courage creates bravery, empathy, 3 main skills. Guys, this has been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. I was thinking, do I really want to do this tonight and on a Sunday morning? But I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time. Super practicing what you teach about generosity. Super generous with your time. I need to run. So, this has been cool. I'll see you on the internet, guys.
All right. Bye-bye. Love you all.
Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/embodiment podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So please go there. On the embodifacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. If most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodifacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodifacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you. Until next time, welcome home to the body.